Hi everyone, and welcome to your first Ielts listening test. This is going to be from the Ielts Level 15 academic book. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take the listening test, the very first one. But something special, at the very end of it, we will check your scores, and then I will break down each question to show you how you should answer these questions, how you should actively listen. And that's a key thing here. How do you actively listen? Well, to get started, let's just try this. The first thing we should do is take our test, right? So remember, use this book. I'll put a link somewhere in the description so you can get your copy, right? Now here's how the listening test is broken down. The first part is a conversation between two speakers. We must pay attention to the key ideas and key terms in the forms and questions. The second part is a monologue, which means we must listen for the key ideas and facts in the question. The third part is a conversation between people. There may be people, so it is very important to, again, just listen for the key ideas and facts related to the question. And number 4, the fourth part is a monologue, which means we must listen for the key ideas and facts in the questions. Okay, so it's basically the same kind of stuff I was just saying. We have to actively listen for these key ideas. Now, critical listening skills are incredibly important. Here's how we do this. We look for key terms. We find these key ideas in the question. That is how we know what to listen for, right? These are the things we can actively listen for in the dialogues, in the conversations. These key ideas, they're so important. But when we understand how to find them, it makes actively listening so much easier. Let's get ready for the first listening part. You will hear the script for the question. Before any listening test, underline the key ideas and terms for each question. This way, you know what to listen for. A quick hint here, if you see these little blue bubbles, they tell you ideas. This says here, quickly scan the key ideas. Write one word and or a number for each answer. It's the directions, but see that top part? It says quickly scan for the key ideas in each question. That is what you need to do. Now let's get ready and take our first test.
Part 1. You will hear a woman phoning a friend to get information about a job agency. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, William. This is Amber. You said to phone if I wanted to get more information about the job agency you mentioned. Is now a good time?
Hi, Amber. Yes, fine. So the agency I was talking about is called Bankside. They're based in Docklands. I can tell you the address now, 497 East Side.
OK, thanks. So is there anyone in particular I should speak to there?
The agent I always deal with is called Becky Jameson.
Let me write that down. Becky
Jameson. Jameson.
Do you have her direct line?
Yes, it's in my contacts somewhere. Right, here we are. 07866 510 333. I wouldn't call her until the afternoon if I were you. She's always really busy in the morning trying to fill last-minute vacancies. She's really helpful and friendly, so I'm sure it would be worth getting in touch with her for an informal chat.
It's mainly clerical and admin jobs they deal with, isn't it?
That's right. I know you're hoping to find a full-time job in the media eventually, but Becky mostly recruits temporary staff for the finance sector, which will look good on your CV, and generally pays better too.
Yeah, I'm just a bit worried because I don't have much office experience.
I wouldn't worry. They'll probably start you as a receptionist or something like that. So what's important for that kind of job isn't so much having business skills or knowing lots of different computer systems, it's communication that really matters, so you'd be fine there. And you'll pick up office skills really quickly on the job. It's not that complicated.
Okay, good. So how long do people generally need temporary staff for? It would be great if I could get something lasting at least a month.
That shouldn't be too difficult. But you're more likely to be offered something for a week at first, which might get extended. It's unusual to be sent somewhere for just a day or two.
Right. I've heard the pay isn't too bad. Better than working in a shop or a restaurant.
Oh yes, definitely. The hourly rate is about £10, $11 if you're lucky.
That's pretty good. I was only expecting to get £8 or £9 an hour.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Do you want me to tell you anything about the registration process?
Yes, please. I know you have to have an interview.
The interview usually takes about an hour, and you should arrange that about a week in advance.
I suppose I should dress smartly if it's for office work. I can probably borrow a suit from Mum.
Good idea. It's better to look too smart than too casual.
Will I need to bring copies of my exam certificates or anything like that?
No, they don't need to see those, I don't think.
What about my passport?
Oh yes, they will ask to see that.
OK.
I wouldn't get stressed about the interview, though. It's just a chance for them to build a relationship with you, so they can try and match you to a job which you'll like. So there are questions about personality that they always ask candidates, fairly basic ones, and they probably won't ask anything too difficult, like what your plans are for the future.
Hope not.
Anyway, there are lots of benefits to using an agency. For example, the interview will be useful because they'll give you feedback on your performance so you can improve next time.
And they'll have access to jobs which aren't advertised.
Exactly. Most temporary jobs aren't advertised.
And I expect finding a temporary job this way takes a lot less time. It's much easier than ringing up individual companies.
Yes, indeed. Well, I think I've covered everything.
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 1.
Okay, great. Now that the first test is complete, let's get ready for listening test part 2. You will hear the script for the question. Before any listening test, underline the key ideas and terms for each question, just like we just did. This way, you know what to listen for. Here we go. Quickly scan for the key ideas. Here we go. Choose the correct letter, A, B, or C.
Part 2. You will hear a woman giving a presentation about a holiday on an island in Britain that her company organises. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Good morning. My name's Erica Matthews, and I'm the owner of Matthews Island Holidays, a company set up by my parents. Thank you for coming to this presentation, in which I hope to interest you in what we have to offer. We're a small family-run company, and we believe in the importance of the personal touch. So we don't aim to compete with other companies on the number of customers. What we do is build on our many years' experience, more than almost any other rail holiday company, to ensure we provide perfect holidays in a small number of destinations, which we've got to know extremely well. I'll start with our 6-day Isle of Man holiday. This is a fascinating island in the Irish Sea, with Wales to the south, England to the east, Scotland to the north, and Northern Ireland to the west. Our holiday starts in Heysham, where your tour manager will meet you. Then you'll travel by ferry to the Isle of Man. Some people prefer to fly from Luton instead, and another popular option is to go by train to Liverpool and take a ferry from there. You have 5 nights in the hotel, and the price covers 5 breakfasts and dinners, and lunch on the 3 days when there are organised trips. Day 4 is free, and most people have lunch in a cafe or restaurant in Douglas. The price of the holiday includes the ferry to the Isle of Man, all travel on the island, the hotel, and the meals I've mentioned. Incidentally, we try to make booking our holidays as simple and fair as possible. So, unlike with many companies, the price is the same whether you book 6 months in advance or at the last minute, and there's no supplement for single rooms in hotels. If you make a booking, then need to change the start date, for example because of illness, you're welcome to change to an alternative date or a different tour for a small administrative fee.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
Okay, so what does the holiday consist of? Well, on day 1, you'll arrive in time for a short introduction by your tour manager, followed by dinner in the hotel. The dining room looks out at the river, close to where it flows into the harbour, and there's usually plenty of activity going on. On day 2, you'll take the coach to the small town of Peel, on the way calling in at the Tynwald exhibition. The Isle of Man isn't part of the United Kingdom, and it has its own parliament called Tynwald. It's claimed that this is the world's oldest parliament that's still functioning, and that it dates back to 979. However, the earliest surviving reference to it is from 1422, so perhaps it isn't quite as old as it claims. Day 3, we have a trip to the mountain Snaefell. This begins with a leisurely ride along the promenade in Douglas in a horse-drawn tram. Then you board an electric train which takes you to the fishing village of Laxey. From there, it's an 8-kilometre ride in the Snaefell Mountain Railway to the top. Lunch will be in the cafe, giving you spectacular views of the island. Day 4 is free for you to explore, using the pass which we'll give you. So you won't have to pay for travel on local transport or for entrance to the island's heritage sites. Or you might just want to take it easy in Douglas and perhaps do a little light shopping. The last full day, day 5, is for some people the highlight of the holiday, with a ride on the steam railway from Douglas to Port Erin. After some time to explore, A coach will take you to the headland that overlooks the Calf of Man, a small island just off the coast. From there, you continue to Castletown, which used to be the capital of the Isle of Man and its medieval castle. And on day 6, it's back to the ferry, or the airport if you flew to the island, and time to go home. Now, I'd like to tell you a bit more.
That is the end of part 2.
Okay, let's do the listening test part 3. Here you will hear the script for the question. Before any listening tests, always underline those key ideas and terms for the questions. This way you know what to listen for. It's the same thing for every part, trust me. Here we go. Quickly scan for the key ideas. Choose 6 answers from the box and write the correct letter, A through H.
Part 3. You will hear 2 psychology students discussing the effects of the order in which the children in a family are born. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Ed, how are you getting on with the reading for our presentation next week?
Well, okay, Ruth, but there's so much of it.
I know. I hadn't realised birth order was such a popular area of research.
But the stuff on birth order and personality is mostly unreliable. From what I've been reading, a lot of the claims about how your position in the family determines certain personality traits are just stereotypes, with no robust evidence to support them.
OK, but that's an interesting point. We could start by outlining what previous research has shown. There are studies going back over 100 years.
Yeah, so we could just run through some of the typical traits. Like the consensus seems to be that oldest children are generally less well-adjusted, because they never get over the arrival of a younger sibling.
Right, but on a positive note, some studies claim that they were thought to be good at nurturing. Certainly in the past, when people had large families, they would have been expected to look after the younger ones.
There isn't such a clear picture for middle children, but one trait that a lot of the studies mention is that they are easier to get on with than older or younger siblings.
Generally eager to please and helpful. Although that's certainly not accurate as far as my family goes. My middle brother was a nightmare, always causing fights and envious of whatever I had.
As I said, none of this seems to relate to my own experience. I'm the youngest in my family, and I don't recognise myself in any of the studies I've read about. I'm supposed to have been a sociable and confident child who made friends easily, but I was actually terribly shy.
Really? That's funny. There have been hundreds of studies on twins, but mostly about nurture versus nature.
There was one on personality which said that a twin is likely to be quite shy in social situations because they always have their twin around to depend on for support.
My cousins were like that when they were small. They were only interested in each other and found it hard to engage with other kids. They're fine now, though.
Only children have had a really bad press. A lot of studies have branded them as loners who think the world revolves around them because they've never had to fight for their parents' attention.
That does seem a bit harsh. One category I hadn't considered before was children with much older siblings. A couple of studies mentioned that these children grow up more quickly and are expected to do basic things for themselves, like getting dressed.
I can see how that might be true, although I expect they're sometimes the exact opposite, playing the baby role and clamouring for special treatment.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
What was the problem with most of these studies, do you think?
I think it was because, in a lot of cases, data was collected from only one sibling per family, who rated him or herself and his or her siblings at the same time.
Some of the old research into the relationship between birth order and academic achievement has been proved to be accurate, though. Performances in intelligence tests decline slightly from the eldest child to his or her younger siblings. This has been proved in lots of recent studies.
Yes, although what many of them didn't take into consideration was family size. The more siblings there are, the likelier the family is to have a low socio-economic status, which can also account for differences between siblings in academic performance.
The oldest boy might be given more opportunities than his younger sisters, for example.
Exactly.
But the main reason for the marginally higher academic performance of oldest children is quite surprising, I think. It's not only that they benefit intellectually from extra attention at a young age, which is what I would have expected. It's that they benefit from being teachers for their younger siblings by verbalising processes.
Right. And this gives them status and confidence, which again contributes in a small way to better performance. So, would you say sibling rivalry has been a useful thing for you?
I think so. My younger brother was incredibly annoying, and we fought a lot. But I think this has made me a stronger person. I know how to defend myself. We had some terrible arguments, and I would have died rather than apologise to him. But we had to put up with each other, and most of the time we coexisted amicably enough.
Yes, my situation was pretty similar. But I don't think having two older brothers made me any less selfish. I was never prepared to let my brothers use any of my stuff.
That's perfectly normal, whereas sometimes...
That is the end of part 3.
Listening test part 4. You will hear the script for the question. Before any listening test, underline the key ideas and terms for each question. This way you know what to listen for. Quickly scan for the key ideas. Write one word only for each answer.
Part 4. You will hear a student giving a presentation about a type of tree known as the eucalyptus, which is common in Australia. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Today, I'm going to talk about the eucalyptus tree. This is a very common tree here in Australia, where it's also sometimes called the gum tree. First, I'm going to talk about why it's important. Then I'm going to describe some problems it faces at present. Right, well, the eucalyptus tree is an important tree for lots of reasons. For example, it gives shelter to creatures like birds and bats, and these and other species also depend on it for food, particularly the nectar from its flowers. So it supports biodiversity. It's useful to us humans too, because we can kill germs with a disinfectant made from oil extracted from eucalyptus leaves. The eucalyptus grows all over Australia, and the trees can live for up to 400 years. So it's alarming that all across the country, numbers of eucalyptus are falling because the trees are dying off prematurely. So, what are the reasons for this? One possible reason is disease. As far back as the 1970s, the trees started getting a disease called Mundula yellows. The tree's leaves would gradually turn yellow, then the tree would die. It wasn't until 2004 that they found the cause of the problem was lime, or calcium hydroxide, to give it its proper chemical name, which was being used in the construction of roads. The lime was being washed away into the ground and affecting the roots of the eucalyptus trees nearby. What it was doing was preventing the trees from sucking up the iron they needed for healthy growth. When this was injected back into the affected trees, they immediately recovered. But this problem only affected a relatively small number of trees. By 2000, huge numbers of eucalyptus were dying along Australia's east coast of a disease known as bell miner-associated dieback. The bell miner is a bird, and the disease seems to be common where there are high populations of bell miners. Again, it's the leaves of the trees that are affected. What happens is that insects settle on the leaves and eat their way round them, destroying them as they go, and at the same time they secrete a solution which has sugar in it. The bell miner birds really like this solution, and in order to get as much as possible, they keep away other creatures that might try to get it. So these birds and insects flourish at the expense of other species, and eventually so much damage is done to the leaves that the tree dies. But experts say that trees can start looking sick before any sign of bell miner-associated dieback. So it looks as if the problem might have another explanation. One possibility is that it's to do with the huge bushfires that we have in Australia. A theory proposed over 40 years ago by ecologist William Jackson is that the frequency of bushfires in a particular region affects the type of vegetation that grows there. If there are very frequent bushfires in a region, this encourages grass to grow afterwards, while if the bushfires are rather less frequent, this results in the growth of eucalyptus forests. So why is this? Why do fairly frequent bushfires actually support the growth of eucalyptus? Well, one reason is that the fire stops the growth of other species which would consume water needed by eucalyptus trees. And there's another reason. If these other quick-growing species of bushes and plants are allowed to proliferate, they harm the eucalyptus in another way by affecting the composition of the soil and removing nutrients from it. So some bushfires are actually essential for the eucalyptus to survive as long as they are not too frequent. In fact, there's evidence that Australia's Indigenous people practiced regular burning of bushland for thousands of years before the arrival of the Europeans. But since Europeans arrived on the continent, the number of bushfires has been strictly controlled. Now, scientists believe that this reduced frequency of bushfires to low levels has led to what's known as dry rainforest, which seems an odd name as usually we associate tropical rainforest with wet conditions. And what's special about this type of rainforest? Well, Unlike tropical rainforest, which is a rich ecosystem, this type of ecosystem is usually a simple one. It has very thick, dense vegetation, but not much variety of species. The vegetation provides lots of shade, so one species that does find it ideal is the bell myna bird, which builds its nests in the undergrowth there. But again, that's not helpful for the eucalyptus tree.
That is the end of part 4.
All right, let's check the answers. Remember that this is your first test. These are only your current level and not where you will go after I teach you. You will do much better. Unless you're fluent in English, then you probably did amazing. Well, let's keep going here. Ready? Part 1, here are the answers for the first 10 questions. Check your answers and look at your spelling, because spelling is important. Now, here are the answers for Part 2, questions 11 through 20. Look at your spelling. Make sure you spelled them right. Here are the answers for Part 3, questions 21 through 30, and check your answers. Here are the answers for Part 4. These are questions 31 through 40. Check your answers and look at your spelling. Okay, so now that we've got all of our answers, we've checked our test, what does your score mean? Well, here's what you can expect with this score. If you have a 0 through 17, take your time and improve your vocabulary and listening skills, and keep practicing. Don't give up. This is just a practice test. This isn't the end of the world. The last thing you want to do is get discouraged. If you score an 18 through a 27, this might be an acceptable score, but it depends on your university of choice. Some will say this is good, and some really competitive universities might say, it's not the greatest, right? Now, what if you get a 28 through a 40? This is a really good score. It's likely acceptable, so well done. But that doesn't mean you should relax and rest. Always continue to build your vocabulary, because just because you did well on this test doesn't mean the next test, the real test, is going to be easy, right? You could see a whole different set of vocabulary. The key with these tests, Ielts, all of these tests, TOEFL, every one of them, vocabulary. Do you understand the vocabulary? Do you have the necessary test-taking skills in order to find the answers? Use the process of elimination. I'm going to help you with that stuff. Let's get started. Now let's think about this idea of the key idea, right? To understand what to listen for, we must find the key terms in each question. Then we will see what we are supposed to listen for in the dialogue. That's so key. That's so important. Let's find the key ideas. This one's quite simple. Listen for the address. Now, the next one, the name. It's pretty easy, right? We need to listen for the name. The speaker will give it to you. And actually in this, they spell it for you, which is pretty handy. Here, we need to listen for a phone number. So we have to listen carefully for each number. If you're having trouble with numbers, practice them. Now, in the case of this test, I know you heard him say 333. They will do this to confuse you, to trick you, right? You'll hear 33, 66, 55, triple this. Usually, this is something that British speakers will do. Most American English speakers do not do this. But on the case of this test, just make sure you understand what double and triple means. You have to think quickly. Best time to call her. Oof. This is a great key idea. This one needs context, though. What is context? Context is what everything is about. They are talking about calling someone. Best to call could mean time or how to call. How to call doesn't make sense here with context. So here it means time. That means we have to listen for a time. Typical jobs. This means that everything now will be specific to the job at the agency. We must listen about the job, okay? That's kind of a hint right there. We know what to listen for. There's going to be other talking and discussing between the two characters. We need to only listen for the job-specific stuff. Let's find the key idea here. Must have skills. So what is the required skill that you must have? There will be some skills that you need, but at some point, the person is going to say, you must have this skill. So must have is definitely a key thing to listen for. How about this one? For at least. This means how long or how much. Since it says one, we can guess time. Now, pay is money. We all like money. We need to listen for how much per hour, because it says per hour. It has the rate at the end there. So this is the number we have to listen for. This is pretty easy, right? We're listening for these specific things. Now, wear. We need to listen for something we wear, which is clothing. Now, what would you wear to an interview? Something very specific, and the person is going to say it. Must bring. What do you need to take? We must bring something, and they will say must bring in the dialogue. It's easy, right? We can just listen for that part. Now, what will they ask questions about? They will ask questions about something. He is going to say what to listen for, what questions will be asked. That's when we start listening. Oh, they're going to say these questions. Now we know to listen for the answer. What will you receive at the interview? It could be a thing or experience. So we know we're going to get something. We're going to receive something. Always think about synonyms, right? Maybe it's receive on the question, but it could say he will give you something, right? Give and receive, you will get something. It's this idea of synonyms. They all mean the same thing. Just because it is a key term in this question does not mean it will be stated exactly like that in the dialogue. The idea here is the key idea, not just the term. Terms make it easy. Terms are the words, and we listen for the words, but sometimes they don't use the same word. We must listen for that idea. Okay. Less. Something is not as important. It's less important when applying for a job. Now, what is it, right? It says less important, right? Less in implying. I'm stumbling over my words. Applying for a job. What's less important? Now, here are the answers. And let's see how they match, right? Name, Jameson. Cool. Phone number is a number. Best to call is a time, just like we said, afternoon. Must have communication skills. Jobs are for at least 1 week, and the pay is usually 10. Now, we have 10 number or 10 the word. Both are correct. It's all about the fact, you know. Wear a suit. Ooh, jumps right out at you, right? I'm wearing shirt. Oh, we need a shirt, right? We listen for the clothing. Must bring your passport. Ah, my passport. That makes sense, right? They will ask questions about your personality. Now, the feedback you receive. Ah, we said a thing or experience. Well, feedback can be both a thing and experience. Cool. And less time. Ah, less of something is involved when applying for jobs. These key ideas, these key terms really help out. Let's look at the next part here. But first, how did you do? Did you get all of these correct? Did you hear those key terms, those key ideas? Now remember, this is the first time I show you this, so it's okay if you missed them. We're going to do more of these in the future. So these ideas, these understandings of how to find the key terms will really help you in the future. Let's look at the next part. We need to match facts about the company. Look at the answer choices. So see here in the question, it says, according to the speaker, the company. Well, the company's now the subject, right? Has been in business for longer. That's a key idea. More destinations. That's another key idea. And more customers. We have to listen for that. Which one's the answer, right? Number 12. Where can we meet the tour manager, right? And now we have to listen for a location. We need to match this city's name. Just listen for the answer, right? If they don't say Liverpool, it's not Liverpool, right? So it's not so bad. How many lunches? Now we need to listen for a number. Customers have to pay extra for. Pay extra. That's an idea, right? We have to listen for this idea. What do they pay extra for? Now, here are the answers. They all kind of match, right? This is what we have to pay for. This is what we have to listen for. These key ideas, they really help us out when we're trying to eliminate the wrong answers and choose the correct one. Now, here, let's look at the next part. What can you see or view from your dining room, right? What can you see? What is in the dining room? Something specific related to the location, a place, right? They might say, oh, you can see this from the bathroom. Well, that doesn't match. And you can see this from the dining room. There it is, okay? See what? What can we see? Something may have happened, right? Listen for the date when Tynwald might have been founded. Well, we know it's a year, right? Because it says not 979, right? So we're listening for a date. Ooh. Where in Snaefell is the train going? I really hope I said that name right. Where in Snaefell are they going? Where is the train going? That's something we have to listen for. We're listening for that name, Snaefell. It's pretty obvious, right? So we're listening for train and Snaefell. That makes it much easier, right? Provides transport. What is given to you for transportation? Only listen for one because the answer is both transport and heritage sites. Don't listen for unnecessary information, and that's such an important thing. You have all of this information to listen to, right? But if we know the key idea, we can choose just one thing for our brain to pick up, and that's active listening. Now, something is a railway. Which railway? What railway? We're listening for something about a railway train. That'll be easier. Now, has old castle. What? What has an old castle? So we're listening for something about a castle. Now, let's look at these. What can we see? We can see a river. The date, 1422. And where does it go? To the top of Snaefell. What is provided? A pass. And what kind of railway, right? What railway? A steam railway. And what has an old castle? Where is this old castle? It's in the capital. Okay? These key terms help us match the answer. How did you do on this one? Was this one easier than the first? We'll see. That's important. We start to understand these key terms, and it might be easier for you later. Let's look at 3. For questions like this, we have to read the answers first, then match the words while we listen to the speaker. So before you do anything, you always read the questions. Well, here, it's the opposite. We have to read the answers first. Read them first, and then listen. Because now we know what to listen for. We're listening for these specific terms, right? These specific terms, and then we're going to listen and, older person, older child. That's it. Now I know how to match them. Eliminate as much of the useless information as you can and only listen for the key ideas, these key terms. That makes it much easier. Now, here, this is the one where we have to use critical thinking. So we've been using active listening the whole time, and you still will for this one. But critical thinking skills are important. A and B both relate directly to this question, but are not supported by what the speaker says. When we listen to them, we don't hear anything about these two answers, right? So that means they're written in a confusing way. They're written to make you think A or B is the choice, right? But because we've already read the answers, right? We've read the question, we found out the key terms, birth order and academic success. Now we know what to listen for, and we didn't hear any of that match up. So the other choice is the answer, right? Some studies neglected this. Okay, surprising is a key idea we can listen for. Surprisingly, oh, there it was, right? We can easily hear that word in a dialogue. So we're going to have to listen for that. And it matches up with mainly thanks to their roles as teachers, right? We could match this up just on this simple key word. Okay, the last one here. Now you have to listen for the facts that are said twice. Both speakers must agree, which means they both say the same facts. And these are our answers. So that one was a little tricky, right? But not impossible, because we had these key ideas to help us listen correctly, to listen actively. This skill gives you a leg up. It gives you a boost in confidence because I know what I should listen for. Now, let's go on to part 4. Let's find the key ideas here. This is just like a clause. Yes, just like you have in school. It's very simple, right? This means that our general topic is the title, and it is right here, the eucalyptus tree. Listen for the key words that match and fill in the blanks as we go. So that's important. We know that everything is going to be about our subject, the title. And we find our key ideas in our sentences to make it easier to listen to. So here, provides what? Shelter. Its leaves provide. So it's another one. We had provides, but the nice thing is this is going to happen in order, right? So we know this first provides, we hear, is going to be that answer. And maybe the second or third, but it's more specific. It says leaves. What do the leaves of the tree provide? Oil. That's how we found the second answer. Lime. Okay, lime is an easy word to hear. So that makes it us listen actively. Oh, lime, I heard lime. Roads, that's what it is. Okay, feed on eucalyptus trees. I say words wrong too. Everyone does, it's okay. So what feeds on the eucalyptus trees? Well, I know koalas do, but in the story, in the dialogue, it says insects. It's specific about this thing. That's what we would write. Now, bushfires. High frequency, mid frequency, and we have low frequency. We have 3 different types, right? Fortunately, it goes in order through the dialogue. High frequency bushfire. What does it do? Grass. Mid frequency bushfires make more what? Water. It makes water available to the trees. Okay, cool. And it helps maintain the quality. These key ideas, we're listening for that. And low frequency, they have dry, simple ecosystem. Come on, how often do you hear the word ecosystem? It's a key term. Boom, I can listen to that. Ecosystem. I haven't heard that all day. There you go. And an ideal environment. It's going to be put together. It describes the environment. These key ideas make it so obvious, right? When we're listening to this. Just get comfortable finding these key ideas. That will always make it easy. So, did you do as good as you thought you would? Remember, we practice to get better. Don't expect mastery on the first try, or even the second. It's all about practice. And I really hope you had a good time with this lesson. I hope you enjoyed what we did, and I hope it really helped you. I'm going to be making all of the different tests and explaining them just like this. So if you enjoyed this, let me know. And I'll keep helping you out. Good luck, and don't give up. Remember, study vocabulary. It's very important. Bye.